Oh, the dark side of Cuba. Cuba lies in the northern part of the Caribbean region, amidst three major bodies of water: the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic Ocean. Surrounded by four large island groups, with Cuba itself being the largest island, occupying the majority of the country's land area and ranking 17th on the list of largest islands in the world. La Habana is the capital of Cuba, also the largest city not only in Cuba but also in the entire Caribbean region. This city has also been ranked as one of the most beautiful cities in the Americas. Cuba possesses ancient beauty and impressive stretches of beaches. However, this nation also harbors many dark sides. For instance, internet usage here is very difficult. Cuba has four currencies which confuse tourists, and the use of ration cards to purchase food persists. Let's explore the dark sides of Cuba together. Number 16. Cash only. Cash is king in Cuba. US credit and debit cards are not accepted anywhere in Cuba, and you must pay for everything in cash. Therefore, you have to leave your US dollars at home. The government imposes an additional 10% fee for using this currency. For foreign tourists, there are ATMs, but you will incur transaction fees and high conversion rates. The best way to ensure you have enough cash is to exchange currency at the airport upon arrival. Currency exchange there is the best and worth the long wait. Number 15. Payment confusion. The most common question you will encounter when in Cuba is, how can I pay you in Cuba? This question extends beyond just paying with cash or cards, as people are puzzled by the existence of four different currencies. In 2021, the Cuban government unified two national currencies in circulation domestically: the Cuban peso and the convertible peso, pegged to the dollar and exchangeable for other foreign currencies. The idea behind this was to make the island's economy, long restricted under tight state control where the government owns and manages most enterprises, more attractive to foreign investors. Instead, four currencies were introduced. This further weakens the economy as they distort prices in relation to each other. Depending on the restaurant, store, or service, people can pay with Cuban pesos, dollars, euros, or MLC, a virtual currency introduced by the government in 2019. MLC is used by loading dollars onto a card. This card can only be used to purchase goods at state-run stores. However, they cannot be exchanged back into dollars in cash form. Cuba's peso also suffers from two official exchange rates, one for businesses and one for individuals. Additionally, there's a third unofficial rate where $1 can be exchanged for more pesos on the street. What do you think about Cuba's payment system? Comment below. Number 14. Cuban cigars are extremely expensive. Cigars are a luxury item representing freedom and power, especially favored by the upper class. One of the places with the best quality cigars in the world is Cuba. Cigars are a type of dried and rolled tobacco, tightly wrapped into cigars. Cigars are much larger than cigarettes. Cuba grows a considerable amount of tobacco. Habano cigars are the highest quality cigars in the world, available in over 150 countries and becoming a symbol of the country. For over 200 years, the cigar-making culture in Cuba has remained unchanged. Each leaf is checked for variety, shape, and quality, and is handed over to highly skilled cigar rollers, who are highly respected in Cuban society. Cuban cigars originated in the 1960s, associated with a bodyguard of Fidel Castro named Bienvenido Chico Perez. After trying this type of cigar, he inquired about the cigar maker named Eduardo Ribera, from the raw materials to the techniques used to make it. Then Fidel Castro sought a group of rollers along with Eduardo Ribera to a former castle on the outskirts of Havana to build a small factory specializing in this special type of cigar. Cuban cigars are renowned as the finest tobacco products in the world. A box of high-quality Habanos can cost thousands of dollars. The reason for their high price is that each Cuban cigar goes through about 500 handmade tasks from seed to rolled cigar to become perfect. Every year, Habanos S.I., the exclusive distributor of Cuban cigars in over 150 countries, hosts a cigar festival in the capital city of La Habana for 5 days to introduce and showcase premium products. This is where the most famous Cuban cigar brands like Cohiba, Partagas, Hopman, Romeo y Julieta, Montecristo gather. The festival attracts the interest of cigar enthusiasts from over 70 countries worldwide. In addition to enjoying or purchasing cigars, visitors also have the opportunity to visit the most famous tobacco farms in Pinar del Rio province, western Cuba. Tourists can witness master cigar rollers at work and, if they wish, even roll a cigar for themselves. Have you tried Cuban cigars yet, and would you like to try them? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Number 13. Cubans are highly spiritual. Cubans also believe in saints, and one of the most revered figures is the saint, Lazarus. Legend has it that, while still in the earthly realm, St. Lazarus was afflicted with sores, causing many to shun him. Stray dogs would come and lick his wounds, miraculously healing them. Consequently, the image of St. Lazarus is often that of a man wearing tattered yellow clothes and a wide-brimmed hat, accompanied by a pack of dogs. Cubans often place his statue in a corner of their homes. Every day they leave loose change near it. On December 17th, St. Lazarus' Day, they collect all that money to buy wine, candles, sweets, and cigarettes for offerings. Those with disabilities often place a picture of St. Lazarus in front of their seats. Moreover, Cubans have many other spiritual beliefs. For elderly couples, if one of them passes away, Cubans will take a string used to measure the height of the deceased partner, cut it, and place that segment into the casket of the deceased. They believe that by doing so, the deceased will not drag the living partner along. Additionally, if one accidentally step on horse manure, Cubans consider it lucky. However, since horses are a common mode of transportation in Cuban provinces, with horse manure littering the roads, this might bring lifelong luck. A rather interesting aspect is that Cuban students often engage in charm playing. If they know the name of a teacher before exams, they often write the teacher's name on a piece of paper and place it in the freezer to ensure passing the exam. I haven't seen such a charming charm-playing tradition elsewhere. Furthermore, the majority of Cubans aspire to travel abroad. To turn this dream into reality in the new year, on New Year's Eve, they take their suitcases out onto the street, as if going on a real trip. This belief is so widespread that in Cuba, after New Year's Eve, you'll see many people walking the streets carrying suitcases. Sometimes they even form processions, with someone leading the way banging a drum cheerfully, followed by a line of people carrying suitcases strolling through the streets. What do you think about these beliefs in Cuba? Leave your comments below. Number 12. Cuban emigration to other countries. For decades, Cuba has restricted the emigration of its citizens, and many Cubans living abroad complain about bureaucratic obstacles and hefty fees to maintain ties and renew documents with their homeland. In just 1 year, from 2021 to 2022, over 270,000 Cubans, equivalent to 2.5% of the country's population, were apprehended by US authorities while attempting to illegally cross into the US. This was seen as a massive wave of Cuban migration that the US had to deal with a record migration amid the worst economic crisis in decades. Since no visa is required to enter Nicaragua, many opt to fly or take boats to Nicaragua, then pay human trafficking networks to smuggle them into the US. The total cost can go up to $7,000 per person, while the average monthly wage in Cuba is only $157. Cubans leave their country in search of better living conditions amidst the island nation experiencing its most severe economic crisis since the 1990s. The exodus from this island has added tension to an already near-collapsed economy and burdened Cuban society, with many families breaking up and dispersing around the world. Number 11. Horse-drawn carriages and bicycles are the main modes of transportation. Cuba's traffic laws are extremely strict, so drivers are very cautious, rarely exceeding 110 kilometers per hour. This makes them hesitant to overtake other vehicles, even a horse-drawn carriage if there's another car approaching in the opposite direction within visible range. At a railway crossing, even if it's abandoned, drivers still stop, look both ways, and then let the car cross. At all intersections, if there's a yellow triangular sign that says "Pair Stop," upon reaching it, drivers must stop for a few seconds. There are quite a few traffic police stations along the road, and everywhere you must present your documents, even if it's just a directive to drive very carefully. On the highways, there are mostly cars and very few motorcycles. In rural areas, horse-drawn carriages and bicycles are still the main modes of transportation. Moreover, if you're traveling on Cuban roads, it's very common to see the interesting sight of people hailing for rides quite densely, and many drivers stopping, offering rides. This is because Cuban traffic laws stipulate that vehicles with blue license plates, which signify government vehicles, are obliged to give rides to hitchhikers without demanding anything in return. In Havana, if the police catch a driver refusing a ride while their vehicle is capable of carrying passengers and on the same route as the hitchhiker, they're fined for sure. Due to the lack of public transportation, people waiting for buses at bus stops are quite crowded. However, there's no pushing onto the bus here. Whoever arrives first gets on first, in an extremely orderly fashion, and if the bus is already full, then they wait for the next one. For Cubans, there seems to be no sense of urgency. Everything is relaxed, leisurely, and incredibly laid back. Number 10. Outdated internet. According to the Cuban government in 2011, only 25% of the population had access to the internet. Most people didn't have internet access at home and had to go to public hotspots. Before 2018, internet access in Cuba was almost non-existent. By January 2018, there were nearly 500 public locations offering high-speed Wi-Fi access. However, home and mobile internet were still considered luxuries for the people, with internet costing $2 per hour of usage, while the average monthly wage ranged from $17 to $30, and phones capable of internet connection were sold in state-owned stores for $200. Therefore, for many years, Cubans would download data onto USB drives and share them with each other. Although mobile data is still very limited, according to a Texas data, 150,000 residents out of a total population of 11 million access the internet daily. The internet scarcity in Cuba is not only due to the policies of the current government, but also because of the long-standing US embargo, which prevents US companies from operating in Cuba. Apple and Google app stores also don't allow downloads by Cuban users. Apps like Skype and WhatsApp are blocked. People can only access Facebook through the web version. What do you think about this situation in Cuba? Share your thoughts below. Number 9. Economic crisis. Cuba has to import up to 70% of its food and fuel to meet domestic demand. Tourism and the sugar industry are the two main sources of income for Havana. However, tourism completely collapsed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the sugar industry in Cuba lost its harvest season, producing only 66% compared to a normal year. By 2024, the country had experienced its fifth year of economic crisis, struggling with minimal foreign exchange as production plummeted sharply. The main reasons are frequent fuel shortages and power outages in the country. Cuba imports most of the food and fuel it consumes. However, due to reduced revenue after the COVID-19 pandemic, hindered by the harsh US sanctions and tourism operations, which used to be a pillar of the economy in this Caribbean island nation, facing difficulties, Cuba is facing an unprecedented economic crisis. Cuban Minister of Agriculture, Yidal Jesus Perez, stated that pork, rice, and bean production decreased by over 80% in 2023, and egg production decreased by 50%. Hospitals in the country are lacking basic medical supplies such as sutures, cotton, and gauze, resulting in over 30% fewer surgeries than in 2019. Nearly 68% of essential medications are either unavailable or in short supply. In addition, public transportation, which is very important in this country with few vehicles, is struggling due to fuel shortages and difficulties in finding replacement parts. Cuban ministers revealed that domestic freight transportation continues to decline and is only half of what it was in 2019. The industry is operating at 35% capacity. With no fuel, the country is experiencing comprehensive paralysis from agriculture to services. In its history, it has operated similarly, but now even tourists have to queue for a long time to buy fuel. Additionally, there's the issue of power outages, which the people of Cuba endure daily, hourly, and sometimes even affecting political tourism. Number 8. Many hotels in Cuba are run down. Not all of Cuba's tourist infrastructure is as advertised. The economic crisis has also affected business operations here. Despite allocating a large portion of public investment to build more hotels, the housing supply on the island is among the worst in the world. Cuba has hotels, restaurants in shambles and scarce essentials, and the worst quality rental tourism services. Moreover, if you go to Cuba, you'll see images of dilapidated buildings all over the tourist trail. These images conceal a painful reality of the country. Cuban people have endured a housing crisis for decades. Lack of investment in public works, restoration of architectural heritage, water services, lighting, sanitation, and waste collection has turned Cuban towns and cities into unhealthy and dangerous environments, sometimes with deadly collapses. Number 7. Poor services. When you walk into a restaurant in Cuba, don't expect to be served with a cheerful attitude or quickly with a smile. The truth is, you might start feeling like the concept of smiling doesn't exist in Cuban working hours. Of course, some tourist spots have trained their staff very well and you can find some excellent service in Cuba, but overall you'll receive extremely rude service. Has anyone experienced service in Cuba yet? Please share your thoughts below. Number 6. Selling Coca-Cola used to be illegal. Anyone here like drinking Coca-Cola? Let me know in the comments, because it seems like Cuba isn't a big fan of this drink. Along with North Korea, Cuba is the second country in the world to ban the sale of Coca-Cola. This ban has been in place for nearly 60 years and was only lifted in 2015. The popular soft drink here is called Cola, sold in both cans and plastic bottles. Occasionally, you can still find stores selling Coca-Cola imported from Mexico at double the price. While finding a bottle of water is as difficult as finding Coca-Cola, rum is sold abundantly in city stores. Number 5. Cuba doesn't have many new cars on the streets. Visitors to Cuba will be amazed to see many retro cars on the streets. These cars are considered an indispensable part of Cuban culture. They are not just a means of transportation for the people, but also a unique cultural feature found only in this country. Currently, the majority of operating cars in Cuba were manufactured in the United States before the 1950s. The rest are cars produced by the Soviet Union, accounting for about 30%, with very few of the newer models. Cuba began importing sedans from China in 2009 for use as police cars, taxis, and rentals. Cubans have been allowed to buy new cars from state dealerships since December 2013. There are about 60,000 vintage cars in Cuba, mostly Fords and Chevrolets, as well as many Ladas, evidence of the Soviet influence on the country after the revolution. What do you think about these unique cars? Leave a comment below. Number 4. Cuba bans the use of Fidel Castro's name for titles, awards. In 2016, the Cuban National Assembly passed a law banning the use of the name of leader Fidel Castro for naming public buildings or erecting memorials to the historic leader of the Cuban Revolution, in line with his wishes before his death. Reuters reported that while alive, the legendary leader of Cuba often emphasized that he did not want a cult of personality around him. According to the law, the Havana government prohibits the use of Fidel Castro's name for organizations, squares, parks, boulevards, streets, and other public places, as well as any type of medals, honors, or prestigious titles. Furthermore, this law also prohibits the use of Fidel Castro's image to build memorials, statues, or commemorative signs, as well as all other similar memorials in public places. However, the law allows artists to use the image and name of Fidel Castro in their works such as literature, music, dance, or art. At the same time, the use of images of the Cuban revolutionary leader or images related to his revolutionary career at public events is not limited. What do you think about this law? Leave a comment below. Number 3. The Iron Man of Cuba. Dubbed the Iron Man of Cuba, 32-year-old Lino Tomasson trains his body by using a hammer to strike himself 1,000 times a day. Tomasson is a street performer in Cuba. He first caught the media's attention in 2020 when a video of him punching and elbowing a concrete wall became viral on social media. His performance acts include doing push-ups with someone sitting on his back, using a hammer to hit his wrists, fists, and shin. To prove his point, Tomasson even asks others to wield the hammer and strike his body. Tomasson said he began body training with a hammer at the age of 15. He has self-struck with a hammer millions of times and claims not to feel any pain. What do you think about this man? Share your thoughts below. Number 2. The use of ration cards. Ration cards still play a role in the daily lives of Cubans. Ration cards were first introduced in March 1962 after Cuba faced economic sanctions from the United States. Cubans refer to ration cards as La Libreta, a small booklet containing 20 pages and providing for over 3.6 million households to purchase essential items each month. Currently, Cuba still operates a system using ration cards to obtain rice, milk, and bread from state-run stores. In addition, Cubans use ration cards combined with additional payment at a lower rate than buying outside the market to purchase goods. Each household is allowed to buy according to the standard per capita without exceeding the limit. Foreigners are not issued ration cards. They can only buy goods at markets, supermarkets, or shopping centers. In 2019, due to economic sanctions imposed by the US government, each Cuban citizen was only allowed to purchase one chicken in supermarkets. The government aims to regulate the consumption of various items such as meat and soap. Other products like rice, beans, eggs, and sausages can only be purchased using ration cards. Number 1. Vintage car repair requires permission. Every province in Cuba has a vintage car club. These are gathering places for the oldest and most intact cars since their production. These clubs are currently preserving a large number of vintage cars, a collection unmatched by any other country in the world, such as the 1905 Cadillac dubbed the National Treasure. These clubs are managed by the Havana City History Office, which has the authority to permit or deny repairs or replacements for vintage cars. Trading is entirely non-existent. Vintage car clubs are currently managing 431 cars. On Sunday mornings, the clubs organize vintage car parades in Havana. Those who join these clubs must adhere to a principle that any repairs or replacements of parts require permission and can only be carried out when approved. Since these are vintage cars, repairing or replacing parts is quite challenging because there are no longer any places manufacturing such cars. Therefore, replacing a part for a car involves a long and laborious process. One fascinating aspect of Cuba is that anyone who owns a car becomes a mechanic. For the people of Cuba, a car is a significant asset, and they invest a lot of effort and money into it. Many cars in Cuba may look vintage on the outside, but their engines are from modern cars like Hyundai, Mitsubishi, or Toyota, and everyone tends to install diesel engines for fuel efficiency and easier purchase from outside sources. Cars in Cuba are not just means of transportation. In many cases, they become the primary source of income for a family. Many people rent out their cars for interprovincial travel, charging $40 to $60 per day. So in a month, they can earn nearly $2,000, a considerable amount for most Cuban citizens. Additionally, many people take advantage of driving taxis in the evenings. Cuban taxis are called Maquina and Coco, colorful vintage cars that may have convertible tops. So we've explored some aspects of Cuba. What do you think about these? Have you lived in or experienced Cuba? Remember to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching our video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest videos. See you in the next videos.